When you hear depression, I think for most of us, the first thing that comes to mind is purely emotional, right? That sort of heavy sadness, maybe losing interest in things, hopelessness, and that's absolutely a huge part of it, that emotional side. But what we're finding, and we'll dig into today, is that if you only look at that, you're actually missing quite a lot of the picture. Okay, let's unpack this. Our mission here is to explore the science, really, that shows how this condition, which so many people experience, secretly shows up in your body. We're diving into physical symptoms, things like aches, fatigue, even that feeling of brain fog that you might be feeling, and will never connect back to your mental health.
That's exactly right. Research now is quite emphatic that depression isn't just an emotional state. It's really a full system experience, a physical one, that fundamentally changes your internal biology. So we're going to walk you through 7 of these lesser-known signs, really focusing on these physical ways it shows up. Because honestly, understanding the full scope is so crucial for actually treating it effectively. And just before we jump in, we absolutely have to say, this conversation is purely for informational purposes, okay? It's not meant to diagnose anyone or replace professional medical advice. If you or maybe someone you know is struggling, please reach out to a qualified healthcare provider or a mental health professional. That's always the first step.
Absolutely. So let's start where the mind and body really seem to intersect quite directly.
Yeah.
Pain. We're calling this sign 1 the physical pain paradox. The idea here is that the pain of depression isn't just, a metaphor. Our sources really highlight that this condition is physically painful.
Yes, that's a key point. People who are struggling often report these unexplained chronic aches, and they're often quite specific. They might point to their back or their neck as sort of the main problem areas. But persistent tension headaches, general stomach pains, those are also really common complaints.
Okay, but that could sound a bit like general chronic stress, couldn't it? Did the research we looked at pinpoint anything specific, like a unique biological reason why depression causes these particular aches? Is it genuinely physical, or is it more about how we perceive pain when we're depressed?
No, it's definitively physical. The sources are pretty clear that depression actively interferes with the body's natural inflammatory response. And we don't just mean that as a metaphor for feeling stress. We're talking measurable systemic inflammation. Your body's own defense chemicals are sort of stuck in on mode, constantly elevated. And that triggers genuine pain signals throughout the body. It's a real biological process causing these physical symptoms.
Right, okay. So if we follow that thread of systemic inflammation, the sources seem to give us a pretty clear pathway, which is actually why we're jumping ahead a bit here, to sign 7, digestive disruption. This seems like one of the most obvious ways that internal inflammation can actually show up in a way that's, well, visibly uncomfortable.
Precisely. Beyond those general aches, that internal distress often hits the gut quite hard. We're talking about things like stomach cramps, noticeable bloating, just a general feeling that things aren't quite right internally.
And the physical signs are really clear there, too. The sources talk about actual bathroom issues. Specifically, increased irregularity, maybe constipation, or sometimes the opposite, instances of diarrhea. It's like your gut is actively mirroring that stress response the brain is kicking off.
Yeah, and while, simple things like trying to eat well, maybe taking probiotics can certainly help manage the symptoms day to day, the sources are really firm on this. For significant lasting relief, you really have to address the underlying depression itself. Those gut issues are often just one symptom of that bigger systemic inflammatory cascade going on.
Okay, so moving beyond the inflammation and the sort of direct physical aches, let's shift gears a bit and talk about the reality that depression seems to create inside the brain itself. Cognitive function. Sign 2 is what we're calling the memory maze. Does this sound familiar? Maybe you often struggle to recall simple, everyday details, or you feel like you're constantly battling this really frustrating brain fog.
This specific type of cognitive issue is often missed, I think, because people just put it down to being tired. But particularly when depression is more severe, people can really struggle quite dramatically with their short-term memory and also just sustaining concentration. It really impacts daily life, work, everything.
It feels a bit counterintuitive, doesn't it? This struggle with focus and memory. I mean, it sounds a lot like maybe generalized anxiety or just burnout. Did the research point to anything unique about the cognitive footprint of depression, something that sets it apart from those other kinds of stress?
Yeah, the unique part really seems to be the long-term impact. Depression isn't just about forgetting where you put your keys today. It can actually lead to difficulty recalling major life events down the line. Memories can feel like they're blending together. Past events might get mixed up. You literally have trouble organizing your own personal history. And here's a really critical detail. These cognitive problems, this forgetfulness, this lack of focus, they might even continue after treatment, even when the emotional symptoms start to lift. It's like this physical shadow that can linger.
Wow, that detail about the cognitive shadow sticking around, that really drives home how physical this is, doesn't it? Okay, now let's move from our internal memory to how we perceive the world outside. Sign 3, we've called the monochrome world. Can you imagine just your everyday world suddenly looking duller, maybe grayer, less vibrant, just flat?
It sounds metaphorical, but this is a dramatic finding because it seems it's not just a feeling. There's some startling science here. Studies actually showed that patients with depression had significantly more difficulty with something called contrast perception. Basically, they found it harder to tell the difference between black and white, and that directly feeds into that sense of the world looking hazy, dull, kind of grayish.
So your world is literally losing its dynamic range. That's incredible.
Yeah. And the physical cause they identified is key. It seems to be due to dramatically lower retinal activity. Your brain is, in effect, sort of dampening down the signals from your eyes. What's really fascinating is that the severity of this visual dulling seems to be directly linked to how severe the depression itself is. It just shows you how deep the physical regulation aspect of this condition goes.
Okay, moving on to how this condition affects sort of the body's systems and regulation. Let's talk about a really crucial one. Sleep. This is sign 4. Sleep schedule chaos.
Sleep is so fundamental for repair, and depression can bring really serious and often quite confusing changes to it. We tend to see two extremes, either people sleeping way, way too much hypersomnia, or the complete opposite, struggling with severe insomnia, barely sleeping at all.
And it's that paradox again, isn't it? The idea that you can sleep for maybe 10, 12 hours, but wake up feeling even less rested than when you went to bed. It perfectly shows that something biological is off, not just, how long you're in bed. The sources also pointed to a specific connection sometimes, right? Some individuals seem to struggle more with sleep apnea when they're depressed.
Yes, that link has been observed. Sleep apnea interrupts breathing, obviously, and that prevents you from getting into proper deep REM sleep. REM sleep is absolutely critical for mental and physical restoration. So if that's disrupted, it just feeds the cycle of fatigue.
Yeah, right. And that failure to get truly restorative sleep, that crushing fatigue, it feeds directly into our next point, sign 5. Reduced sexual desire.
Yeah, the loss of libido isn't just a psychological thing here. It's often tied directly to that constant, overwhelming fatigue we just talked about, also the increased physical pain we mentioned earlier, and just that general systemic loss of pleasure in life and hedonia.
The positive side, I suppose, is that these instances are often temporary. They might fluctuate depending on how severe the depression is at any given time. However, there's a really important nuance here. The source is stressed. If that reduced desire becomes a long-term thing, and it doesn't get better even when the depression is being treated, it's really important to seek medical advice because it could be a sign of underlying hormonal issues that need separate investigation and treatment.
That's a crucial point, and it leads us nicely into our final sign, sign 6, which is about increased vulnerability and how depression can worsen other conditions. When your body is experiencing chronic depression, it's constantly bathed in stress hormones like cortisol, and that chronic exposure interferes with your body's natural ability to heal itself effectively.
Which creates this sort of dangerous double whammy, doesn't it? First, depression can actively make the symptoms of other physical conditions you already have worse, things like diabetes, heart disease. And second, because your immune system is taking a hit from all that chronic stress, you just become fundamentally more susceptible to picking up infections, colds, flu, that sort of thing.
Exactly. And if you look at the long-term data, consistently having depression significantly raises the risk of developing other serious conditions later in life. We're talking about chronic conditions like arthritis, various kinds of heart problems, and even strokes. It really hammers home the message that depression isn't isolated. It makes your whole body more vulnerable and really needs that holistic attention.
So after all that, what does this really mean for you, the listener? I think the key takeaway from this deep dive is pretty clear.
Yeah.
Depression is a disorder that truly impacts your entire physical being. It's not just a feeling locked in your head. It's systemic inflammation, it's digestive upset, it's that bone-deep fatigue, and it's even literal shifts in how you perceive light and color in the world around you.
And understanding this, understanding the science, should really encourage all of us to think about health much more holistically. If you're experiencing, say, unexplained aches and pains that won't go away, or chronic stomach issues, or just that persistent brain fog, it's so important to consider the role your mental health might be playing in that physical experience.
And the material we reviewed also leaves us with a really encouraging message. You absolutely don't have to fight this multi-layered condition on your own. Please don't let any lingering stigma hold you back. Reaching out to the right mental health professional is often the single most powerful first step you can take. It helps treat the root cause of not just the emotional pain, but these pervasive physical symptoms too.
Yeah. And just think about the depth of that connection for a moment. If your mind, through depression, can literally change how you perceive the difference between black and white by affecting your retinas, what other aspects of your reality might it be subtly shifting that perhaps you haven't even noticed yet? Consider that persistent systemic physical shadow this condition casts. And remember, addressing the mental root is absolutely key to helping the body find its balance again.